We're going to be checking out watercolor landscapes today. Do you notice how in this picture the colors fade as we move into the distance? That's atmospheric perspective. To create a similar scene using watercolors, you'll need to experiment with value. You might also want to give the wet on wet watercolor technique a try. Notice how the colors bleed together as long as I have one wet color applied over another wet color. You can also pick up and move your sketchbook around to help the colors move into each other. You can use either your sketchbook or the watercolor paper in your art kits along with the tape to create a frame like I'm doing here. The tape will be removed once the artwork is completely dry. Lightly sketch some areas of mountains on your paper before getting into the painting. I'm going to work monochromatically. That means that I'm only going to use one color. I'll be using different values of this one color. I've covered my paper from top to bottom in the first value, which will be the lightest. The next value that I'm using is a little darker than the first, and it is in the background. In the middle ground, I'm going to add a value that's just a little darker. You notice that every time I add a new value, I take it right to the bottom of the page. For this last area, I have my darkest value, and it is in the foreground, so it is in the front. Another watercolor technique you might want to try is a splatter. If you take your thumb and just rub it against the edge of your brush, you can create a splatter. Maybe this would be useful for adding something that looks like stars, and if it gets into a part of your painting that you don't want, you can go ahead and brush it out with a little water. You may have to let your painting sit for a bit before you remove the tape, but once it's dry, you can go ahead and do that and you will have your finished work. Check out these watercolor artists. This is Emma Larson, who makes abstract artworks. This is by Jennifer Tyers, who makes landscape artwork. And this is Barbara Nietzsche, also a landscape artist. Now it's your turn to create some of your own watercolor artworks.